this have to like, okay, we are going live on LinkedIn. Yay. Last time I had this like massive crisis with the whole situation because I had like created it differently than I was supposed to. And I was like, oh no, technical issues. Like, this is why we test things. So we're live on LinkedIn,
Yes.
on YouTube,
Nice.
and on Facebook. And I'm so excited, Jackie, to talk to
Wow.
you. Like,
I know. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I realized maybe 5 minutes before you came on that actually you've interviewed me for a job before.
Okay, yes. So I remember this, and I couldn't remember if it was an informational interview, if it was like a legit
I
interview.
think it was a legit interview, but like I'll tell you right now, I was not in the headspace to take that job. And I'm pretty sure I took that interview like on the road. I was moving from Idaho to Texas, like post pandemic kind of thing. Like it was early 2021. And I just was like, I don't know what's happening. And Holland was like, listen, you should come work for us. And then she's like, you would love Jackie. And so I think she just like bypassed everything and was like, go talk to Vanessa. So yeah, but I was always like very impressed with you. I was like, okay, cool. And then I've just like watched your career from like behind the scenes talking to Holland this entire time. And I just like obviously everyone in Ask Work Wife Land knows that like Holland is the operations manager of our life. And like she
Right.
just, if you want an optimized system, that's her. But when she tells me things like Jackie taught me everything that I know, I'm like, okay, we need to talk to Jackie then. Like, I don't need a middleman, Holland. Like, what is this? So I'm
Well,
just
she's being a little too kind. Holland just like has that innate like mindset for operations, and really what I do is just ask her like you know targeted questions because I know she probably already knows the answer. So she gives me too much credit in that regard.
well, we're gonna find out for good or for bad today. Like that's where I'm at. Is like, let's go and figure out like what does Jackie actually know? Because I'm telling you, I've been watching you from a long time and I get like inside scoops from Holland sometimes, and I'm just like, I think I know things about operations. Like I can like put together a good process. Like before I got to it like truly into marketing, my entire job was understanding like the life of a firearm, like from the moment that it's like enters a property to the moment it leaves a property, because if it's not like a normal inventory, if you're missing one, that's a felony. So like
Right.
it's a serious situation everybody's involved in.
Yeah.
So like so I think I'm pretty good at operations sometimes, but literally every time I like hear about you or like see something you post on LinkedIn, I'm just like little mind blown emoji. I'm like, what is happening? I have no idea. She's just like unlocked an entire new like thought process for me. So that's why I'm like, can I just have 45 minutes of your time today and you just teach me all the things?
I will say, like, my viewpoint on operations is like totally self-taught through
Mm,
like experience, right? So I started my career in development and fundraising, and a lot of it was like kind of project management, account management stuff. So I'm not like traditionally trained in operations. I don't
I
have my
think it's
MBA,
better.
all that kind of stuff. So, some like real big time CEO type of people might be like, I don't know exactly what she's talking about, but I can speak to my own
But
experience.
most CEOs are self-trained anyway, because they were just like, I have an idea or I have a better way to do this thing, right? So like,
Right,
let's go fuck around and find out. I'm like, that's how we get new systems, new operations, new whatever. Like that's how we change the whole world, right? Like
right.
think about all of our favorite tech companies that started in a garage somewhere, you know?
Yep, yep,
Cool.
definitely.
Well, talk me through like what is exactly operations? Like I think that's the biggest question I have. Is like anytime I look at, an Ask Your Wife Land, we're always looking at job descriptions. And every time I pull
Right.
up a job description for operations, it's something different, like wildly different. And I'm like, it either could be the office manager or the secretary or the admin, or it could be a project management role, or it could be 10 million other things. This could be facilities management. So like, what are
Right.
we talking about when we're talking about operations?
Yeah, and all of those things that you just mentioned kind of like all work hand in hand with each other. So
Mhm.
it's not surprising that you see like operations roles like cover a wide spectrum of things. And honestly, quite frankly, I've seen a trend where like operations is trending towards like data science, analytics, those types of things,
Mhm.
which is new for me, and we can talk about
Mm.
that a little bit
Okay.
more, but kind of in my viewpoint, like operations, we create the infrastructure of an organization that enables it to run both effectively and efficiently. So,
Mm.
and a lot of cases, like I'm not necessarily the one that's setting the overarching strategy. Let's just use marketing as an
Sure.
example. But my team and myself, I'm responsible for building the systems, the processes, et cetera, to implement that strategy in the most successful and
Mm.
efficient way.
I love the word infrastructure. Like this is how I feel about the government. Like your job is to build roads and maintain them. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is what we're supposed to be about. If I see a pothole, I'm like somebody's not doing their job. So I like
Right.
that's such an interesting word to use in terms of operations. And like what did you say to run effectively and efficiently?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So how does like let's dig into it. Like how does the ops versus admin versus project management relationship run? Like what does that really look like?
Yeah, and usually they run like in tandem, especially if
Okay.
you're at like a bigger organization that has like an ops team, they have an admin team, and they have a project management team. And so, like I mentioned, ops is focused on business processes, systems, setting up that infrastructure, maintaining it, asking people for feedback, making sure those systems and processes are able to scale with the company.
Okay.
Admin, in my viewpoint, provides like all the necessary support for all departments, including operations,
Hmm.
to function effectively. So
Mhm.
usually they're managing like logistical and foundational tasks that are required of the business to run day to day.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, admin for me has always been like the person who kind of knows where to go. Like, oh, you don't know how to click into this infrastructure? Let me help you. These are on ramps and off ramps. Like, oh, you look lost. Let's just get you pointed in the right direction, and
right.
you can go from there. Okay, interesting.
Right. And they're oftentimes like doing the core things that need to happen for a business to function.
Mm,
Right. So
sure.
whether it's like setting policy, making sure people are aware of policy, things like setting agendas, like
Mm.
people sleep on admin a lot of the time. But if you're a good operator, you know the administrative team is like the most important team that you need to be aligned with in a
Yes. Oh, I have multiple episodes about admins and how useful they are for your career because like those are the people that know everything and everyone and like man, if you piss them off, you're just out. Like you're just you can't function. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
they support like the highest executives at a
yeah,
company. So
totally.
they really like if you want the inside scoop of how a business is running, culture, all of those things, like that's the administrative team
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
And then project management, like I like to think of project management as focused on specific initiatives that have like a really defined start and end date and deliverables.
Sure.
And they're responsible for getting that project from point A to point B and make sure that it's happening on time, in budget, in scope, and making sure all the necessary key stakeholders that are involved in that project are kind of like in line and following protocols and making sure that they're bringing in the necessary people to unblock things so that projects aren't super held up by whatever
Interesting. Yeah.
roadblock that
I
might
feel
happen.
I feel like the biggest like overlap maybe in job descriptions or like people working in ops is maybe project management because they're like project managers are the ones who might be like following the infrastructure. They're the ones who are like doing the thing. And so they're
Right.
often in charge of like enforcing it or sometimes creating new things or like maybe that's a weird gray area that like needs to be further like delineated. And that's what I'm hoping we can like
Yeah.
provide people today, frankly.
Yeah. And, I think in order to be a good operator, like you have to be able to manage projects from start to
Mm.
finish and follow like a pretty standard process to do that. Because if you can't do that, then you're not creating that continuity that is needed to have a really solid operational infrastructure. So they do
Yeah.
go hand in hand. And I think like the key here is for project management, it's oftentimes like more focused on a specific project deliverable program. And
Mm.
sometimes operation is like more all encompassing. But again, it totally differs
Hmm.
depending on the company and what type of uh, team structure that they have.
Interesting. Okay. Well, if anyone's ever listened to an episode of Ask Your Wife, you know that Holland and I cannot deal with an analogy. Like we don't understand sports analogies. We don't understand any kind of analogy. We're okay every once in a while with the transportation analogy. I'm like, I got a road in this conversation so far, so we're doing fine. But like, to give me, if you can keep it to transportation, that'd be ideal for my brain. But like, is there
I did
another world in which we like have an analogy that kind of showcases these relationships?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, and I don't know why transportation came to my brain
it's,
immediately, but like,
it's the word infrastructure. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, I think it
Secretary's
is, right?
interior would love
We're
us.
on theme. So okay, you think you're at the airport, right?
Mm.
You're getting ready to depart from one location
I just got
to
back
the
from
next.
London, so I was
There
there.
you
Yeah.
go. I see like the admin team as the flight attendants. So they're the
Mm-hmm.
ones making sure everyone's getting on the plane, they have what they need, and that they're ensuring that that journey is as smooth and comfortable for all the actors, right?
Sure.
Whether you're a pilot or you're a passenger. Operations people are those like pre-flight people that you see like making sure that the plane is being checked, like they're following protocols, you're checking the engines,
Okay.
getting the bags on the plane,
I'm
like
good.
all of
Yeah,
that,
I'm picking it up.
right?
Mhm.
And so they're communicating with the flight attendants. This is when we can start getting people going. We're ready for takeoff. Those kinds of things. And then the project managers are like air traffic control. They're making sure you're getting from point A to point B very
Yeah.
safely, and
Oh,
you're not
okay.
hitting other things on your journey, on the way. They're communicating, with the other air traffic control, like in other locations, making sure other planes are getting to their destination safely, that you're not interfering with each other's flight paths. So that's
Mhm.
kind of like how I've thought about how can I explain this in
Mm.
terms that people might understand.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I was gonna say flight attendants and admins always have the best snacks. Like everyone just seems to understand that. Like that's an analogy that works for me. And like Brittany is accurate. Sports analogies are the worst. So we're gonna stick with transportation. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I love sports, but yeah, I couldn't find a nice one that fit.
Like
And I was like, how do I get Caitlin Clark into making
I
sense?
like watching sports live, but don't ask me to name people. Don't ask me to follow things. Like I'm like I'm just an extrovert who loves people. I'm like, oh, this is my recharge space, so it's fine.
Right.
Well, so given that we're when I see ops things, they're like one man band usually. And it
Hmm.
feels like you cannot do that with an airplane. So like does this analogy hold? Like how many people do we really need to be running ops? Like what's going on here?
Right. I mean, and it totally depends. I think one mistake that people make a lot of the time is they're like, I'm going to hire one operations person that's going to do admin, they're going to do project
Mm,
management, they're going
yeah,
to build the infrastructure. And then what you get is an individual that's oftentimes in analysis paralysis, because it's like, where do you start?
yeah.
I'm like doing the admin things that are critical for the
Mhm.
business to move forward in the day to day, but also like, for example, I work for an agency. We're onboarding our partners or clients in 10 different ways, so then the
Sure.
customer experience is really bad. So do I go there? Or like, we're launching a new product, someone has to project manage that, like,
Yeah.
whole process. So that's having a one person band for operations can work in a small environment, but eventually you need people that are kind of like expert operators in their area, and
Mm,
they can make sure that the systems and processes in their respective area like supports the business need of that area is running smoothly. They're building strong relationships with those
interesting.
stakeholders, and they're constantly evaluating like how they can essentially like unblock roadblocks for people, or they can scale in that area, or that the systems and processes that they've created are constantly being updated to be reflective of the business.
Yeah. You're like your airport's kind of running 24/7, right? Regardless of how like where the planes are going, you don't really care. It's just a matter of like getting the people on the plane, make sure the security is
Right.
in place. Like that's interesting. And like you have to only care about that. Like I think even this analogy is going to hold up well actually. Like there's even like a very specific point in time where like you cross over from like the land to the air side of the airport, right? And like
Mhm.
you're no longer in like the purview of like the local city authorities. You're in the federal government's jurisdiction because like
Right.
there's a hard line there. And like I was just talking to a friend yesterday who left his laptop at security, but he was in Canada and he had to like to go get it. He actually had to go back he had to get escorted from the America side to back through Canada to pick up his laptop and then back through security. And he was just like, it was such a nightmare. And I was like, that's like, you don't see it all the time because, like, in an airport, you're just like, the snacks and the boards and the stuff. But like, there
Right.
are some like hard lines on which, like, no, this belongs to this person, and this belongs to this person, this belongs to this person. It's like, that's my biggest question, really, is truly like, who owns this like infrastructure building? And like, do you have enough people in your organization so that you can have one person or two people or experts in their field like dedicated to just making sure like the planes are running on time, that like the luggage is where it needs to be, that like the special
Right.
luggage and all the skis are where they need to go, and like nobody forgot that laptop.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and who owns it? I think, like, really, for operations to be successful, like, everybody has to own it, right? And so
Okay.
that's why if you think about something like a process, part of that, people talk about like the RACI model, so you know who's responsible for what, accountable for what, so on and so forth. I won't go
Mhm.
through it, but why is that important? Because if everybody owns it, then nobody owns it and nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like, developing a workflow, setting a process, training people on that, like that is definitely operations or maybe project
Okay.
management on that side of things. And you also have to be like and we're gonna talk about like what it takes to be an ops person, but like you're the number one accountability person. So if so and so isn't pulling their weight on the sales side of things and it's affecting downstream like your marketing situation, like
Yeah.
you're as operations the person that's going to get people together and say like, listen, this isn't working. How do we find a
Interesting.
compromise or a solution that's going to like get us running things more smoothly?
Mm.
So
That's You and I might
yeah.
have to come back for round two just to focus on that, frankly, because having worked in marketing, this is like the number one piece of contention everyone has. Is it sales job or is it marketing's job? And they'll all be the first to point fingers at each other. As a marketer, I've pointed my fingers at sales more often than I care to account for. But like, yeah, that's fascinating.
Right,
Okay,
right. And
interesting.
if you have a really solid marketing ops person and a really solid sales ops person, 9 times out of 10, those two are going to work really well to like
Interesting.
build that infrastructure and hold their teams accountable.
Sure.
And so that goes into like, yeah, sometimes there's like specific operations people that are needed in each team to hold that team accountable and make sure that they're following correct procedure or process.
Interesting. We have a question from Holland, which I'm like, get the free coaching on your own time, babe. But like, can you read that on your screen?
Yeah. How do you balance standing up? Um,
Is that something you want
yeah,
to answer now or a little bit later?
oh, we can talk about it
Okay,
now.
cool.
It's totally fine. So for me, I am in a situation where I'm the solo operations
Oh
person
gosh.
at the
Okay.
moment. So it is a lot of work. I think I'm going to take this from the approach of like a leadership perspective because that's kind of where I'm at right now. One of the things that I do constantly, and people make fun of me all the time, like, Jackie, your calendar is insane. And so there's,
You don't even have to finish that sentence, Jackie. Your calendar is just. Oh.
it's a sight to behold. The reason being is because I'm constantly talking to my counterparts and figuring out like what is a true pain point for them, where are there breaks in our process, et cetera, and thinking through that. And
Mhm.
then, that same thing, like if I roll out a new process, how is it working? I have forms where people can submit feedback if there is something that needs to be
Mm.
updated. And then really I try to think about like what areas are going to have the highest impact and they're the biggest risk for us, and then
Interesting.
prioritizing
Sure.
based on that. So like sometimes people want to create a process for like something that's not really a big business problem, and that's why we have the process development framework I've been posting about to like suss that out
Interesting.
as you're developing a process. But you really have to think like when it comes to the greater good of the business, high risk, high impact, that's where you're going to be wanting to focus your operational power to start, and then going through the list of like maintenance as things come up. But in order to do that, I do it all through conversations with different areas of the business. And that's how I sort of get a good handle of what's high risk, high opportunity for the company that I'm supporting.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I got dropped into a company, it's $3 billion company, multinational, and like they had never dealt with social media before, like never. So I got pulled out of a manager and training program and like asked by the president of the company to like introduce social media to everybody. And so I like sat down at my desk and like I didn't have a laptop yet. I was like, cool, love this. So I sat down at my desk, piece of paper, pencil, and just like wrote out like the org chart, like how it should operate. Within like 2 days, took it back to, I was like, here you go, here's your solution. He just laughed at me respectfully, but he laughed at me and he was just like, no, you're gonna have to know every single one of our 800 products. That's not SKUs, that's products. You're gonna have to get to know all 97 marketers and then come back to me. And like a year and a half later, we implemented exactly what I wrote down, but it was all in that one-to-one conversation. It was all in the like getting people to understand that like doing this in a way that works so that I can like if I'm gone, it works without me. That's what I was working for. Is definitely
Right.
an infrastructure situation. Like I need this to run without me paying attention to it. Like it needs to be something you own, that you have a party to, that like you understand that it helps your marketing, that it's something you need to understand for your further career outside this company, right? Like that was fascinating. But yeah, it was, oh my God, so much of my time was spent just like in half-hour meetings. And I sorted out, we're in a building. So I sorted out like in what order I should go talk to people. So it's like if I take the back stairs up here, then I get these people, and then I jump across the hall to this person, this person, and then back down the stairs, get a cookie from the kitchen, make friends with the chef, and then back to my manager's office with his favorite coffee order. Like that was my whole day. It was
You
wild.
took an operational approach to it. But it's so true, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's this misconception that someone can say, well, we need a process for that. And it's like, okay, we'll have a new process implemented tomorrow. And like, yeah, we might, but I would say 98% of the time, it's not actually going to be solving the business need.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You'll really enjoy this. I say this all the time. I'm like, when I go into an organization, there are 3 processes at work at all times. 1, how it's written down. 2, how the CEO thinks it happens. And 3, how it actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my job becomes like, let's make this one thing that is actually functional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you also like you're hiring new people
Yeah.
hopefully all the time. And
Yeah.
so you have to be able to give someone something that they can reference and really understand like the what, the why, and the how behind it. And if
Yes.
you're not doing that, your process, your system, whatever, it's
Mm.
not going to be successful. And I've seen that firsthand many, many times.
Yeah. So okay, I think we've teased this and now I'm on the edge of my seat. So like this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is like is you've been posting about this process development framework for a few weeks now, maybe a month. And I just
Yeah.
like this is one of those things. Every slide I see, I'm like, this is brilliant. Let's talk about it. So yeah, let's walk through it. Let's tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I'm kind of like the solo operator right now at my current role or job. And one of my peers and counterparts, he's a content B2B guy, but he used to be a COO at a
Okay.
manufacturing facility. So when you talk about operations, like he
He gets
really
it.
knows
Yeah.
like how to, get things moving very quickly, and the downstream effects of like one part of your process isn't working means you're going to be delivering things late.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working with a bunch of people at no fault of their own that aren't expert operators, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm relying on these people to execute on the processes that I've put in place. And I notice this trend a lot of the times, and I kind of alluded to this before, like people say we need a process for that, and they actually have no idea what that is or what a process is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like one of those jargony buzzwords that people love to
We
throw
just need an
around.
SOP. It'll be fine once we have an SOP. Like, or if we get through this, then we can develop the SOP. I'm like, no.
Right, right.
Uh-huh.
And that SOP has a role to play, but
Sure.
an SOP is part of a larger
Yeah.
process, right? So Matt and I put together like some of the best practices that we both have utilized in our careers to
Mm.
create 11-step process development framework that takes you all the way from like concept to scalability.
Wow. Okay.
And
Okay.
the key part of it is like we don't even get to implementation until step 9, because we're telling people like you have to ask like what is it solving, who are the key players in it,
Mhm.
like what are the inputs and outputs, what are the standard operating procedures that need to happen to successfully like complete this
Yeah.
process.
What does
Then you
legal think about it?
implement it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Then
Yeah.
you have to like evaluate it and test it and
Mhm.
ask for feedback and iterate on it. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to share that with people because uh, anyone can say we need a process, but uh, to do your due diligence, you have to think about like all of the things that need to happen before you're ready to implement something like that, or you're going to be implementing a process that's not solving somebody's problem and no one's going to buy into it, and you have no good training materials and it's just going to be a flop.
Totally. Like it's this is like I'm like smiling and nodding. I'm like, this is music to my ears. This is exactly the speech I want to give people when they come and ask me about like brand marketing. Like, oh, I need your help developing a brand. I said, okay. And then their first question is like, what color should we use? I'm like, listen, the graphic design team is the last one to know anything about a brand. Like you have so much to do before you get there. Like
Right,
like it's gonna be cute and adorable to pick a color and a font and like a little icon. But like that is the very last thing out the door that you need to think about. Like, who are you? What are the core messaging? Who are you trying to reach? What do they need to hear? What problem
right,
are they trying to solve? Are you a fit? Yes or no? Like, music to my ears,
right.
Jackie. Thank you.
No problem.
So what is are we gonna walk through the steps of this thing? Like is it a thing that I can point people to download or where can we find this framework?
Yeah, I actually have it posted in 3 separate posts on LinkedIn. It's part
Great,
of my featured content. Uh, Go there. It goes through each of the 11 steps. It gives a little like description of what needs to happen
great.
um, during those steps. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so if people have questions or want to have a chat about it, I'm more than happy to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, perfect. Jackie is tagged in this post on LinkedIn Live. But you'll be in I'm sure you'll be in the comments. I'll tag you on stuff for people who want to go find it. I might even repost it this week because I'm like, I think I have a gap in my schedule, but also it's like worth reposting. I'm like, can I just make my platform the Jackie show? Because this thing's awesome. Like, yeah,
I'll keep posting about it too. It's not a secret. It's something that Matt and I wanted to share with people
that's awesome.
because I think we're both pretty passionate about operations, but we want people to really understand the importance of doing your due diligence and
Yeah.
not rushing it. Otherwise, like I said, you're likely to not have people buy into your
Yeah,
process.
and like we want to have this is my thing with like anything that comes from marketing, anything that comes with social media, like it does me no good to hold this information hostage, right? Like,
Right,
yeah, sure, I can put you through 10 million click funnels and like make you do a thing and give me your email address in exchange for a webinar that's really like a long, slow sales pitch, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't like further the conversation. I'm bored.
right,
Like, I want more people to understand how to do brand marketing so we can actually go about doing the thing of brand marketing. How do we
right.
make and operations that's so effective and so efficient we can actually go about solving the problems in the face of the world. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
let's make cooler things fly. I mean, it's 2024 and I still don't have a hoverboard. So I feel like Martin McFly lied to me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
we haven't sorted out time travel yet. Like if we could just figure out how to get people to like, put their shoes on the right direction, like we could do so much cooler things. So I appreciate that philosophy about you. And that's what I love like coming to your LinkedIn content for because I'm always like, what am I learning today? This is gonna be awesome.
Right. And I really want people to understand how, like, the role that they play
Hmm.
in creating that really solid infrastructure. It's operations cannot do it alone. You
Hmm.
could have a 10-person operations team that is like focused on your 10 key areas of the business.
Hmm.
It's still going to require like a marketer or a
Sure.
salesperson or a finance person or whomever to play a role in that process. And that's kind of one of the things that I really wanted to get across in the process development framework is we all have a role to play. It can't just be on one individual or one team.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like that teamwork aspect is really fascinating to me. And I feel like most people when looking for jobs are going after these really high profile like name brand kind of jobs. And I had a friend of mine come to me and he like he went to school for marketing. He graduated, went to work for an agency in New York, and then kind of was just like, I don't necessarily want to do this. I'm gonna like do my own thing, whatever, whatever. So he's kind of like an agent, like a solo agency consultant kind of person. And then
Yep.
he came to me and he was like, I need to be making more money. I was like, uh-huh. So yeah, welcome. So he's like, I'm trying to get back into corporate America, but like the thing that I would be drawn to is marketing. He's like, but I'm not a storyteller. I'm much more process driven. I'm much more end to end. Like I don't want to sit around and creatively think about the story. I don't want to deal with the people side of marketing. And I was like, well, you need to be looking in ops. Like it's not the jobs that are like the banner jobs, right? But like they're
Right.
so critical to like everyone else being able to do their job well and to like have that communication between sales and marketing, to be able to have that communication between your customer and your marketing team, and run your business efficiently and effectively. I love this definition from you, so thank you. But like, yeah, and he clicked into like a couple ops roles, and he came out of those interviews and he called me. He's like, that was such an amazing experience. I have never had a conversation with somebody who like spoke my language or like thought the way that I think. And I was like, aha, ha, we have found an operator. Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And like, here's the thing. I had never even heard of
Mm,
operations all throughout college. Like, it wasn't something that was really taught. And I don't have my MBA, but I'm sure
sure.
like administrative and operational parts of the business are covered in great detail. But the thing is, like, operations isn't like the sexy part of a company. Like, I'm going to be the first one to
Sure.
say it. There are times when I'm talking and I literally see people's like eyes glaze over on the screen. And I also make fun of myself because people are like, and not to say you can't be creative in
Sure.
operations, because
Sure.
if you look at someone like Holland, she is both
Yeah.
an operator and very creative, and that like rings true in the workflows that she creates.
Yeah.
So I will dispel that myth right away. But I laugh because people are like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna create a new category and we're gonna change the world. And I like raise my hand and I'm like, hey, operational fun sponge here. But like, why are we doing this? How are we doing this? How does this funnel back up to our business objectives? Like, how
Hmm.
is this gonna
Yeah.
advance the company? Do we have the budget to do it?
Yeah.
And
Are we
those
driving
aren't,
revenue? Yes or no? Like,
yeah, right.
yeah.
And those like aren't sexy questions to ask like a bunch of creative folks. But I think the key here, and it is also pretty hard to like one for one draw like operational success to revenue success. It's
Sure.
not like a marketing campaign. But what you can do is track efficiency, and whether
Hmm.
it's efficiency through like consolidating your tech stack to save money,
Sure.
or like I'm a huge fan of Monday.com. We
Hmm.
rolled out a partner onboarding workflow through Monday that
Mm.
our clients or partners can interact with. It's condensed the time to onboard a partner probably by at least 30% so that we can
Wow.
start growing their brands faster. Like,
That's awesome.
these have like critical impacts on the business. But like Holland and I have seen that this before. Like, something great happens, a marketing campaign is really really successful, and oftentimes you're hearing the marketing team being called out, and you're leaving out the marketing ops person that like put their
Oh,
blood, sweat, and tears
yeah.
into making sure that this campaign ran smoothly, efficiently. People had what they needed to be successful, that KPIs were being tracked so that you can give those accolades to people. Um, so I think that's, oftentimes why like you ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up and they're not like, I want to be a chief operating officer. But it is really important, and there are people that like truly excel in this type of role for sure.
No, they truly do. And like that's like it the way that we say this next to work wife is like, I can be our COO. Like I can do it if I have to. Like, but I don't get the same kind of like sick pleasure that Holland does. And like she had to leave us a second ago, so like I can say this about her now. Um, but but like she has this just like drive, passion. It's like her second nature. It's like breathing to her. Like, okay, I see a
Mhm.
system in front of me. How do I optimize it? Like, how do I really like pull these things together so that this is a better experience going forward? How do I like my favorite thing she does is like anytime I ask her to do something, she'll like record herself doing it and she'll give me the delivered thing and then she's like, this is how I did it, just in case you want to know how to do it in the future. I'm like,
Right.
thanks for training me, mom. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like it's taking on that like how do I make this whole thing just work more effectively and efficiently so that we can be about the business of our business, right? Like
Right.
I think some people just like gravitate to that. It's not sexy. It's not like people are often like, but what is it that you do here? Like I keep things running. Okay. Like that's what I
Right.
do.
Right. Well, and I say to like a lot of operators or my team, like, if people aren't talking about you as an operations team, that means you're doing your job well because
Ah,
they're not complaining about like a process not working, not having the training and comms that they need,
yeah.
like all of that. So, we are often running around in the background, ensuring
Mm,
smooth operations across the board. But, um, so if people are more focused on like the campaign that drove X, Y, and Z revenue and
sure.
how successful it was, you can kind of sit back as the operator and be like, I did that,
Give
right?
myself a gold star. Yeah, yeah, that's great. This is why I'm in marketing. I'm like, I need the gold star. I actually need it. Like Holland does not. I'm like, this is what we're up to. That's so funny. I love that. Well, so what would you kind of advice would you give people who are looking for this? Like, I don't know if it's like down to a personality quiz. Like, let's go take a personality quiz. Like, are you good? Are you a fit for ops or what? But like,
Right,
what
right.
what advice would you give like early career people in ops or people who are trying to get into it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think this is kind of how I found my way into it. Like, you are definitely a problem solver. Like, I sometimes, to my own detriment, like see things in problem solution, right? And
Uh-huh,
not
uh-huh.
everything is so black and white, but that is how my brain works. Like,
Mm,
okay, there's a problem. I'm gonna talk to people, gather information, suss out patterns and things that they're saying, so I know what's an actual problem. Sit down and like use Miro to map out like
mm,
how the workflow is currently working so I can visually look at it and being like,
sure.
oh, well, we can be more efficient in this area, or we're
Mm,
lacking X, Y, and Z, which is making us inefficient in that area. So you definitely have to, be someone that is a problem solver and seeks out those solutions and
sure.
does it yourself and can bring people in the room to have those discussions. The second point I'm going to make is if you there are many types of operations. As you get higher in the operations chain, you have got to be like a very strong collaborator
Mm,
because, like I said, I spend a lot of my day talking to directors, the other VP, the CEOs, like what's going on, what
yeah.
are our problems, what's keeping you up at night, what's preventing the team from being successful. And
Mm,
so you really have to be willing to work with people across the organization. And regardless of what you think is the right solution, like educating them, hearing them out, and being able to articulate why like you've decided that this system or this process needs to be implemented in
interesting.
order for it to be successful. Um, you know, a lot of people, we talked about the gold star, like love being like that person who's like getting all the accolades and are true like experts in their areas.
Yeah.
And you can be an operational expert, but I see ops people oftentimes as like Jack or Jill's of like all trades but masters of none, so
Mhm.
you like are okay knowing a little bit about a lot of things so that you can actually like build
Mm,
out those systems and processes that
interest
are relevant to the business, that are going to solve a business need. So you have to be kind of adaptable and flexible in
mm.
that way because not every day is going to be the same.
Yeah.
for sure.
Is it kind of someone who likes to have their fingers in everything? Just like,
Yeah,
I want to be everywhere all at once, but you can't pin me down. Okay, interesting.
right, right. And like you're not going to be working on the same exact thing every day. If you
Sure.
like that, if you having like really clear marching orders,
Hmm.
clear deliverables, like maybe project management is a good place for you to be because
Mm.
you're the one that is, like I said, making sure that like you're getting from
Yeah.
point A to point B, staying in scope, staying in budget. Like that's
Mm.
really good for people who kind of like that uh, standardized way of doing
Sure.
things. And
Interesting.
then last but not least, like you have to be ready to hold people accountable. Like that
Oh,
is
I think this is the
like
hardest
a
part.
lot of your job.
Yeah.
Like people innately don't want to follow process because they think it slows them down. People love to say like we're building the plane while flying it, and I wrote a LinkedIn post about how that statement
I said
like
that last week to
is
Holland. I'm glad she's not here, actually.
um, but you can both have a solid infrastructure and move quickly. In
Mm.
fact, you can probably move faster if you do have a good infrastructure because
Mm.
it's kind of like people's second nature. So that's a
Yeah.
misconception that like having operations or having good processes or procedures slows you down and like hinders your creativity. Actually,
Mm.
no, it gives you more time to do those things because you if everyone's on the same page, they know what needs to happen,
Interesting.
they know who owns
Yeah.
what and when it needs to happen, right?
Yeah. Interesting. What's that's a solid point. Like, what are some ways that like maybe if you are not in operations or you're new to operations that like you kind of you're in your company, you've gotten the job, and you're like looking around and you're like, how can you tell that like maybe the operations isn't as good as it could be? Like, tell me how to find some potholes other than driving over them and like messing up my axle. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's a good one. The number one thing that I do is ask people how certain things happen, and when everyone has a different answer, you know that they're not operating well, right?
yeah,
Um,
100%.
or you ask the question like, oh, okay, so X, Y, and Z needs to happen. Like, who can I talk to about that? And they're like, well, I don't really know. They're kind of like,
Interesting.
okay, well, maybe I should dig into
Yeah.
that a little bit more. And then oftentimes, like your first sign of it is when you're onboarding, like pay close attention to like the training materials. If you're asking how to do things, is there documentation about how to do
Mhm.
it, or are you being trained the same way, like I said, by multiple people? If the answer is no, then that's pretty sure sign that like they're kind of lacking in their
Yeah.
operational infrastructure. And then again, having conversations and really understanding how a business works, how it should work, and
Mhm.
what are the things that people are saying that kind of slows them down. That usually can give you a good idea of where to start.
Yeah, that's interesting. We like that's I mean, frankly, the entire point of Ask Your Work Wife is like, what is the language that like the vernacular that you're supposed to be listening to? Like when you hear the term one-on-one, do you know what that means? When you hear the term status, do you know what that means? Do when you hear the term postmortem, do you know what that means? And it's not a Taylor Swift term. You know what I mean? Like she didn't invent that, everybody. Sorry. So like that's the same thing. Like I love that. Like, are you tuned into how your business should work and like a standard company within your industry, how it should work? Do you know what your role ought to be doing? My biggest red flag when I go into an organization and I start having these conversations is like if I keep getting pointed back to the same person. So
Right.
right, if there's like 4,000 people in a company, but there's only one person who knows how to do lots of really disparate things, I'm like, okay, if that person dies tomorrow, what are we doing?
Right.
Does anyone know? Like anyone? Bueller? Like
Right.
it's like, okay,
Right.
you have an operations personality, but you don't have infrastructure. Like that's what I loved about you bringing up that word. I was like, oh, it suddenly clicks so much more for me. Is like I don't need the person to build the road every day. I need the road to be built and like everyone to be able to drive on it. Like,
Right. And for it to be maintained and,
yeah.
reflective of kind of what the need is, how
Yeah.
you're getting from point A to point B,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah,
Interesting.
for sure. That's a big one. And, it's the saying like, what would you do if so and so was hit by a bus tomorrow? It's very morbid, but it's true.
Yeah.
And if you're the operator
Mhm.
and you're not documenting the things that you're doing, especially like standard operating procedures are a
Mhm.
really good example of that, then you're actually like kind of failing at what you're supposed to be doing.
Just a little. Yeah, like can you go behind yourself and say, okay, what did I do? And I think this is where I don't love being in operations is like I can like see a problem and solve it and go do it. I have a really strong intuition about that. But like if you stop me midstream and ask me what I just did or where I'm going next, I don't know that I can tell you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like so me and the documentation are not friends. So
Right, right,
my favorite like ops roles that I was ever in always were partnered. It's like I had some kind of admin, I had some kind of like
right.
person, some kind of like, okay, they were literally at my shoulder watching me do what I was doing and documenting. And then I'd come back and be like, okay, yes, I did it this way, but for the future, suggest we reverse it or something like that. So we'd actually like build the SOP of the process or whatever
Right.
afterwards and train people on that. But like, yeah, doing it in the moment, I'm like, hey, I will go read your post on not building a plane while it's flying.
I
'Cause that's like a special
know.
skill of mine.
And like, listen, writing SOPs, not fun.
So
I
not
don't
fun.
get joy out of doing it, but I know it's a necessary evil.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like I mean, who has a job where they're like, I love every single element of what I do? I mean, some people, but that and all the operational things that I do, writing SOPs, my least favorite, 100%.
Yeah, totally. I love this from Stephanie. Yeah, if we just described every place you've ever worked, I have news for you. This is why Jackie's not gatekeeping this information, everybody. Like,
Right.
go find her on LinkedIn, read and understand the process development framework, and then give it to everyone. Like, that's my new Christmas present to everybody. Like, no, you get to sit here and you get to learn this. It's not sexy. That's my new favorite tagline. Operations is not sexy. But guess
Right.
what? It's gonna make us all work better.
Yeah,
That's so
absolutely.
I love that. That's great. Anything else you'd like to tell us on the operations side, Jackie, before we let these people go back to their jobs where they are now horrified that
I know. I'm
not
so
running
sorry.
off?
No, not really. Like I said, I mean, a lot of places do things differently. I've seen places that operate way better than I currently do just because they have like a greater team, a greater
Sure.
infrastructure. But, I think it is operations is always changing. It's never perfect, the first iteration of it. So just remember that like progress can be slow and it can be incremental, but when you take a step back after time and see like where you came from, that's really when you get to see the beauty of
Mm.
solid operations.
Ah, that's so rewarding. I love it. Well, thank you so much. You're fantastic. And
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to be up in those comments just learning all the things with the mind blown
Yeah,
emoji.
thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
You're so welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, everyone.